Hello, everyone. Welcome in to Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, episode 37. This is August 11th, 2022. For the first time, well, actually, not for the first time this season, technically the second time, but the first time with my favorite team. I am watching my team play football. So that's always a blessing. I'm Nicholas Hill, live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the United States. And live, as always, from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gustavo Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing? I'm sure you're also rocking the Titans jersey.
I'm doing great, Nick. With a player that today I found out wasn't a great Titans, quarterback. That's why I guess I got this jersey on a sale.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm happy. Number 10, that's a classic. That's a really when you wear number 10 here, at least in Brazil, it's so funny. Like in the NFL, there's no number that symbolizes like you're a quarterback or symbolizes you are like the star or the main player. Like, of course, when you play quarterback, you're the main position, but there's no number in the NFL that symbolizes that you are like you know, the player in the team. Like in Brazil, like in soccer, number 10, you're like the star. You're like the main player. You're like the best player.
Oh yeah, it's because you gotta remember, quarterbacks they can only be, I believe, 1 to 19, at least in the NFL. In college, there you see some quarterbacks that get numbers into the 20s, but there's only so many numbers. So I've always wondered, like, what happens if you have so many amazing quarterbacks that you run out of all the approved numbers, and then you have to start over, and you have to unretire all the numbers.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a problem that's true that's happened. And I guess number 12, I guess now symbolizes a very good number for quarterbacks since Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady's number. I guess 12 that can be like a number that symbolizes like a star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the number 12 it is a pretty iconic number for a quarterback. I don't feel like we've had a quarterback at UT with number 12. We had Nathan Peterman. He wore 12, and he wasn't very good for the Vols. Um, of course, we know what he went on to do. Eventually, made the NFL and threw 5 interceptions and a half against the Chargers for the Buffalo Bills. Not great. He's not in the NFL anymore. But 12 with Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I think of like 18 for a quarterback. Of course, right now the Titans quarterback is number 17. We have number 5, Hendon Hooker. So all kinds of quarterbacks. And really, when I first saw that you were wearing a number 10 jersey, I thought that was a Vince Young jersey, not a Jake Locker jersey. And Vince Young, some people would say he's a bust, but he was an amazing rookie quarterback. Like he came in, we were 0-5 to start that season in 2006. Came in and less went 8-3 finish. Almost took us back to the playoffs. It was really, really good coming out of college, but he had a rough relationship with Jeff Fisher, and he just wasn't built mentally for the long term to be an NFL starting quarterback. But he had a lot of talent, and we saw that what he did at Texas. Had one of the greatest performances in college football history against USC in the 2005 Rose Bowl. And I wish things could have worked out for the better for Vince Young.
Oh yeah, I feel like he was a quarterback that everybody expected to be a star in the pros. I mean, he was a good quarterback for the Titans. I mean, you mentioned that he took an 0-6 team to a 8-3, but sometimes to get your break, to get your place in the NFL is not always a talent. It's about where you landed. I mean, a lot of journalists says in the NFL it's not about you, it's about also where you land. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look the difference between, let's say, we talk about Titans and the Ravens. They're playing right now. I wonder if Lamar Jackson ended up in Jacksonville instead of the Baltimore, if his career would it be as good in the NFL as it is right now.
I doubt it because the Ravens had really good personnel around him to help adjust the offense to his strengths. I think about like a Tim Tebow. Like the Broncos weren't willing long term to adjust to what he needed to be a successful NFL quarterback. So they booted him to the curb for Peyton Manning. And you think about Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill looked like a bust after Miami, but then we bring him into Tennessee, and his career has been revitalized. So it's all about the pieces in football. But and remember, it's a free phase sport. You don't control everything. Think about like LeBron, for example. When he went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, he was able to turn around that team basically single handedly. Because in basketball, you play both offense and defense. And he was just such a good player that he took Cleveland from an absolute trash can franchise to the finals in 5 years. Meanwhile, in football, you could
Look,
be the greatest quarterback in the world, but if your defense sucks, you don't have any hope. If your offensive line sucks, you're not gonna be able to do that much.
that's why I guess Tom Brady and Joe Burrow's performance, in 2021 for Burrow, in 2020 for Tom Brady was so spectacular because the O line for the Bengals, everybody can say that wasn't good. I mean, it was like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah,
But Burrow was so talented that he made the Super Bowl not because of his O line, but despite of his O line. And Tom Brady took over a 500 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that James Winston was, all sorts of crazy stats. I mean, he was the leading quarterback in terms of yard passings, but at the same time was throwing a ton of picks. But then he took over and won the Super Bowl. So I guess that's a fair point. But speaking of the NFL, Titans and Ravens, they're in preseason game right now. I guess this game not much. Like, is there somebody to watch for the Titans? I guess Malio, the
Malik
quarter,
Willis. Malik
Malik
Willis.
Williams. I guess he was the only player that is worth watching for the Titans.
Well, I mean, there's some other players too. So Malik Willis, obviously, he is probably the number one name here to watch. In terms of obviously third round quarterback, could have gone in the first round, but the Steelers chose Kenny Pickett instead. He fell for the draft. Elvin, let's say this, he has overthrown some balls. He's looked shaky. He's a rookie in his first preseason game, but at the same time, he's made some good throws. He had one really nice deep ball. Couldn't catch who it was to while I was kind of getting ready for this pod. He's run around some. You can tell he has a lot of athleticism. He's a big guy. Ran him for a touchdown. So he's definitely settled in a lot. One guy I was really interested to watch. So there's two rookie receivers we have. We have Treilon Burks, the first rounder from Arkansas. Hasn't done a ton in this game. But we're obviously going to need him a ton in the regular season because he's effectively our AJ Brown replacement. And at the Titans are going to have close to the amount of success they had last year. They're going to need Burks to step up because losing AJ Brown obviously is a massive deal unless you can replace that production with Burks. And if you can replace it with Burks, then you saved a lot of money in the process. Also, Kyle Phillips, rookie out of UCLA, might be our slot receiver this year. And I really, I've heard a lot of great things about him in preseason. And he's done a few things in this game. He's going to be a punt returner, it looks like. And he's very quick. He averaged over 20 yards a return on punt returns in college and had 10 receiving touchdowns last year. Also on the defense, a couple of guys I've been watching, Caleb Farley, he's probably going to be a starting corner this year for the Titans. He was out all of last year with an ACL, did not get to play, even though he was our first round pick last year out of Virginia Tech. Really, really need him to be healthy and to come in and help bolster the secondary, the definite weakness of the Titans defense last year. And Rashad Weaver, really so far has looked really, really good on the defensive side of the ball too. He's an edge rusher and could help bolster that front seven that already has Jonathan Simmons and Janoka Autry among other players. And, guys like Harold Landry, Zach Cunningham. The front seven for the Titans, I expect to be one of the strengths of this team. And if we can have a guy like a Rashad Weaver, that will only bolster the strength of this football team. Outside of course, Derrick Henry. But, of course, we don't know exactly what he's going to look like this year, considering that he didn't look great against Cincinnati last year. And the concerns are there about, is he starting to age? Is he past his prime as a running back? Because running backs normally have a limited shelf life. But Derrick Henry, is he the exception? He obviously has extraordinary talent. He has massive size. And if he can, overcome the injury and get back to his pre-injury days, obviously he was just on fire in the first half of last year. In my opinion, he was the MVP candidate. I, up until he got injured. Like through October, I would have voted Derrick Henry for MVP. But we'll see if he can return to that form.
Because I guess when you have that major injury like Derrick Henry, had, it's always hard to come back from the same shape before. I mean, you always have some doubts, but I guess if he can return to like 80 or 85%, I think he can be a great asset for the Titans offense because
Absolutely.
definitely,
And that would help Ryan Tannehill a lot as well. Because
yeah,
Ryan Tannehill really had to shoulder the load the second half of the year. And as we saw against Cincinnati, Ryan Tannehill's not enough alone to carry you to a Super Bowl. If he's going to be a quarterback on a Super Bowl team, he's gonna have to have a ton of help. And I still am not convinced he's the quarterback to totally do so. But he's the quarterback that we have. So yeah, I said I was done with him after Cincinnati, and I'm just have to suck it up and root for him again. And it wasn't like he was terrible all of last year, but still, it's hard to get over the free interceptions in the playoff game against Cincinnati because truly the Titans outplay them in every facet but that, and that's what ended up costing the Titans the win.
it's like we say in soccer. You can play, you can have the best possession, more shots on goal. In the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is when the ball gets to the end zone or to the field goal or to like the field goal post. That's what matters in football.
Oh, of
And
course.
you know, it's not a stats game. It's a points league. It's not a stats league. I mean, and when you have three interceptions and you give three possessions to Joe Burrow, that that has a consequence. And I feel like the Titans fans, especially, they're gonna have these on their minds. And on week one, when they host the Giants, I guess that would be the best hosting team ever. I feel like the Titans hosting the Giants. I feel like that was a blessing for Ryan Tannehill because, and we're gonna discuss later, the New York Giants is a mess right now. They're
Mm-hmm.
currently playing the New England Patriots in the preseason game, and Daniel Jones already went for like a couple of snaps, like 12 snaps, and why it shows they don't trust Daniel Jones when you have to put their starting quarterback to play preseason game. I mean, you know, the Patriots not even considering put Mac Jones, but why Daniel Jones is playing right now? Because they're not sure about it because they're competing for his starting position with Tyrod Taylor.
Oh my God, yeah, that. I mean, Daniel Jones. I would be stunned if he's the quarterback of the Giants after this year. I mean, I would be legit stunned. I think Brian Dable and God, what's his name, Joe Sean, the new GM for the Giants. I do think that they are looking ahead to next year because I mean, Daniel Jones, he's sucked in camp. Like he's thrown multiple interceptions. He just has not looked very good, and I don't expect him to look good in the regular season either. So I think it's going to be a rough year for New York. It's going to be a rough year for Daniel Jones. And yeah, you're right. When you have to put Daniel Jones into the preseason, he was what 6 to 10 tonight for 69 yards. I mean, not terrible, but that's in the preseason.
Yeah, and I guess Tyrod Taylor got more snaps. I guess because when he's the backup, they want to see more of him to see if he has any shot of competing for the starting role. But Daniel Jones, and there was rumors, I guess, or even some reports of brawls and all sort of questioning in his in offense practice. That shows that how the New York Giants organization doesn't trust Daniel Jones. And I think from the start, there was no sense. We say Jake Forrest, the quarterback that I'm wearing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, Jake Locker.
Jake Locker. I guess it's kind of like Jake Locker. Daniel Jones was not a star in college. He was a average quarterback at Duke. The Giants took a very draft him in the first round in an upper pick, and I guess there was any sign that he showed that he was worth this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reason why he had that higher pick is because he was working with David Cutcliffe and had the blessing of the Mannings. Like that's the only reason why he got drafted so high. And and you're right, it never made any sense. He wasn't lighting the world on fire at Duke. You know, I mean, the Giants fans, I mean, they were viciously angry when they made that pick, and they were right to be so because they threw away their future for at least the next couple of years, and now they're going to have to draft another quarterback next year. Because
Yeah.
especially playing quarterback in New York, you have to be able to perform at a certain level, and Daniel Jones was just never ever going to be able to do so. I mean, if he was playing for a smaller team like the Titans or playing in, I don't know, pick smaller like Jacksonville or something, maybe he would have been able to get going a little bit. But the pressure of New York is intense, and I just don't think Daniel Jones was ever able to truly be able to thrive in that.
Yeah, and and it's crazy. For example, to think that you had you know other quarterbacks that on that same like for example, I would have take more risk on Dwayne Haskins than Daniel Jones. I think it would have made more sense,
Yeah, I mean,
but in the end, they chose Daniel Jones. I think, and they're gonna have to, look for other options in the market. I guess the hottest commodity in terms of quarterback that other teams that doesn't have one are gonna look for is a trade with the Giants. For Jimmy G, because of course it's clear that the San Francisco 49ers are ready to move off him. They're ready to make Trey Lance the future of the franchise. They want to take a shot at him. They draft him in the in the fourth pick in the first round. And I think Jimmy G is already a viable quarterback. I think he would be good in the Giants. He'll be good even in Cleveland if Deshaun Watson's suspended for a long time. I think there's a market for him.
oh, there will be. He'll end up somewhere, but then again, too, you have to remember quarterbacks get injured, so the 49ers might hang on to Garoppolo just to keep him in as a safety blanket. So that's always an option if you don't get a package that's good enough. You know what team honestly should trade for the Lions? Or not for well, I just spoiled it. The Lions should trade for Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that if you look at the Lions roster, it's gotten a lot better. And I think Jimmy Garoppolo would be an upgrade over Jared Goff.
So do you think Jared Goff's now career kind of stalled? Do you think he'll be reduced to like a backup quarterback, maybe like a third string? Do you think he kind of peaked? He maybe worked, because of the Sean McVay system. I mean, everybody he was a really good quarterback going out of college. He was drafted first pick in 2016, but I guess he only worked because of the system of Sean. Like it was like he made the team better. He was a good fit in that system, but in the end, he wasn't good enough to defeat Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. I wasn't impressed with Goff coming out of California. I mean, once again, kind of like a Jake Locker, they weren't setting the world on fire. They weren't winning a lot of games. And I know that winning and losing football games is beyond just a quarterback. But I think, especially when it comes to college, you can separate the good quarterbacks from the elite quarterbacks based on how they affect performance. Like Joe Burrow, LSU does not go on a tear in 2019 without Joe Burrow. I think about what Tua did and all the games that he won in college. I mean, Justin Herbert even was winning Pac-12 championships with Oregon. But, at California, I know that the Golden Bears don't have elite talent, but they, in his last game, they were playing in the Armed Forces Bowl. That isn't exactly, the playoffs or a New Year's Six Bowl or even an upper tier non-New Year's Six Bowl. It's the Armed Forces Bowl in Fort Worth, Texas. In his first year, his rookie year, Jared Goff sucked, and that was with Jeff Fisher. Of course, they fired Fisher. They bring in McVay, and he turned the ship around. But remember, he had elite talent. He had Todd Gurley in the backfield, had Robert Woods, had a younger Cooper Cup. He had elite talent around him, and then he gets thrown to Detroit, and just was proven that all the talent propped him up. Kind of like with Tannehill. Tannehill, when he was at Miami, wasn't very good. But in Tennessee, having Derrick Henry behind you, that's going to make any quarterback look better. So, I think with the coaching and the talent that he had in Los Angeles, that was the peak of what we're going to see from Jared Goff. But I think Jimmy Garoppolo could potentially not necessarily thrive, but I think it could have the same level of performance we saw in San Francisco, a guy that's not going to lose you games. But I mean, the Lions wouldn't become Super Bowl contenders. But I think that the Lions are going to win enough games this year to where they're not going to be in that upper tier of draft picks to get a CJ Stroud, a Bryce Young, or whoever else emerges as a top tier draft pick. I'm hoping maybe Hendon Hooker does, but we'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah, yeah, we have to see it, and speak of quarterbacks, the Deshaun Watson situation. The NFL commissioner Roger Goodell finally came out in public and said that he wants to see a bigger punishment. 6 games not enough. I think the NFL really want to take a shot at this because I think if Deshaun Watson gets to play by, let's say, week 7 or week 8, the NFL leadership will see as weak. The other owners will see Roger Goodell be questioned and be like, so you punishes a guy for an entire season because he makes football bets, but you let a guy who had accusations of, sexual misconduct and civil lawsuits. So I think Roger Goodell really, wants to take a stand to don't let owners question his leadership.
Yeah, exactly. I think that it just goes to show the NFL does recognize that what Watson did was way more egregious than what all these other guys did. But there, as we talked about last week, the system is not in place for them to arbitrate this punishment, which is crazy considering all the other power the NFL seems to have. And the fact that we're about to see Deshaun Watson go on a football field tomorrow is absolutely insane. You know, I'm just curious. I wonder how the team is going to handle that. I wonder how the fans in the stands, because I don't know if they're in Cleveland or Jacksonville tomorrow. They might be in Jacksonville tomorrow, actually.
They are at TIAA Bank Field in Jacksonville at, I think was like 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Brazil time. But explain me that how he's able to play in the preseason, but I guess not in the regular season. I guess the punishment
These
doesn't
games don't
count
count.
in the.
Yeah, these games don't count. So I mean, these are practice games that fans just get to watch. So like he can play in a practice game.
I guess the media is gonna, really be on it. I guess the Browns PR are gonna have to like do some damage control or because of course the sports media are gonna, really go on this game to get any kind of comment with anybody from the Browns organization, especially Deshaun Watson because he's gonna play.
Oh yeah, I mean, this will be one of the most watched preseason games ever, just because of we haven't first of all we haven't seen Deshaun Watson play now in over 2 years because of injury, and then this whole you know the whole situation that's occurred off the field. There's going to be people who's continuing just wondering what he looks like. There's people going to be tuning in to see what the fan reaction is like when he gets on the field. Because remember, Jacksonville is a former division rival of the Texans, um, and Browns fans obviously going to watch to see how Deshaun Watson looks like. And, for me, remember the Browns are investing $230 million into Watson. Take all the other stuff off the side. It seems extremely unwise to me to be putting $230 million on the line in a preseason game because there's no guarantee the Jags are going to take it easy on him at all. Like they're going to be going after him. They're going to hit him as hard as they would in the regular season. He could have more of a target now because of the situation off of the field. And we know that he's extremely injury prone. So I think this is a very risky move for the Browns, not just from the off the field standpoint, but from the on the field.
I
And
guess I guess if I have to save it, I would save it for the home game versus the Eagles on August 21st. I guess making a home game at least to make the fans excited to see him. I don't see the relevance of playing a preseason game on the road.
yeah, I think that's a bad idea. But remember, too, even the Browns fan base is divided. There's people who are no longer Browns fans over this, who decide, you know what, I'm not rooting for the Browns anymore because they decided to sign Deshaun Watson. So, but then, so I,
They I would see the fan not cheering for a team after they went 1-15 and then 0-16, then because of a player signing. For me, you know, when you pick a football player, of course, character matters, but you can't stop cheering for an organization because of one signing player, I guess. Like management and front office come and go, but the Cleveland Browns are gonna stay despite moving to Baltimore and then coming back.
I mean that is a fair point. Because I mean, every NFL team ever has had guys with questionable um, character, but I mean, I feel like few teams have ever signed a guy with as a front with the accusation that this guy has had. And honestly, like if you're a Brown, especially if you're a female Browns fan, and you've perhaps are a victim of sexual assault, I don't blame you if you want to change teams because, that would be insensitive to you as someone who was a victim. So I am, you know, people change teams all the time for various reasons, and I think this is one of the times that are absolutely within the realm of acceptability. Um, I don't know exactly what that line would be for me. Would be what if like the Vols or Titans if they ever signed a guy with insane moral questions, um, if I would ever walk away. But I understand like if you're someone who's very sensitive on this topic, who's maybe been a victim or has had a close relative like a sister or a wife who was that was a victim of this. Yeah, I think that's well within your right to change teams.
Yeah, yeah. I get your point. I get your point. Too. Of course, you're free to change and cheer whoever team you want to choose. One of my biggest discussion here in Brazil that a lot of my friends get, and me don't get mad sometimes. Like people from like let's say in the northeast choosing a team from the southeast. Like they never went to the stadium, they never care about the team. But as you said, they're free to choose. And I got even a Twitter response because I questioned like a fan on Twitter, showing a video of Palmeiras fans cheering for Palmeiras in Piauí, which is like miles and miles, like hundreds of miles away. And I question like, why don't they cheer their city teams? And one of my responses like, they're free and they just want to have fun. They're free to choose whatever team they want to choose. Like, so I guess it makes sense in like a point when you see like management making questionable signing, especially the Haslam family. I guess the Haslam family, they are not the gold standard in terms of managing a football team.
Oh no, God no. Because we have that for experience firsthand at UT and just what they've done to the football program there. Now it seems like they have a lot less influence these days, thankfully, as they've moved on more to the Browns. But if you have a really really bad owner, because you think about it, you can't fire an owner. So if you're stuck with a bad owner, I think you have the right to leave that organization because you're gonna be if you're gonna be bad forever. Like if you're in Detroit and you grew up for forever as a Lions fan, at some point I don't blame you if you just give up on the team and go and root for someone better because the Ford family doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I guess in America, it's very it's one of the things I admire more from the United States of America. It's like the loyalty of where you grew up, where you're born, or where you grew up, and with the team. Like if you're born in Tennessee, like you feel like loyalty to the Titans because you feel like a belong, connecting your sport that you like in the city or the state that you like. Here in Brazil, it's kind of like shaky, I guess, because I guess a lot of people choosing the teams from like big cities like São Paulo and Rio, and they don't care about their hometown or their region city team, like the region team. But in the end, and I guess in Brazil, I guess now the ownership groups or owners are going to take over. I guess that's the point. Like our fans are going to continue loyal with soccer teams in Brazil having owners, because in America, I guess it brought up a good question. Like when you're stuck with a bad owner for years and years to come, you get tired of it. You get like, why are you gonna continue rooting for a team where the people leading are incompetent?
Exactly. Incompetence can ruin anything. I mean, look at all the businesses over the years that have failed that used to be extremely successful because of incompetence. 20 years ago, if you wanted to go rent a movie, you could go to Blockbuster. Guess who's not around anymore? Blockbuster. Um, if you wanted to go shopping for appliances 20 years ago, where were we going to go shop? Sears. Guess where you can't go shop anymore? Sears. And sports is the same thing. The Reds, the now Commanders, when they used to be the Redskins 20, 30 years ago, they were Super Bowl contenders. They were constantly conference title contenders. But because of Dan Snyder, when he bought them, he's ran that organization into the ground. And they are rarely competitive for a playoff spot. So, I don't. And you got to remember too. I think there's like migration too. Like there's people leaving like places like California and New York, and they're moving to more of the Sun Belt, but they're taking their fandoms with them. So they're not necessarily connecting to the new teams, or maybe if they're leaving really bad teams, maybe they'll go and connect with the new teams. And also too, even like with the Titans example, for a lot of the older fans around here had to make that choice as an adult, where maybe they were like a Bears fan or something. But when they got that Titans team, they decided to switch over because finally had a team in Tennessee, and that might be a decision I have to face one day if Nashville ever gets an MLB team. I'm probably going to stick with the Braves because that's who I've rooted for growing up. Obviously, they have a very exciting team, but it'd be cool to have an MLB team in the state of Tennessee. So, there's a multitude of things that change because the sports landscape never stays the same. Like, think about the Seattle Supersonics. They don't exist anymore. Like, what did those fans do? Did they go and root for Oklahoma City? No. A lot of them will never root for the Oklahoma City Thunder because they took their team away.
Yeah, it's like here in Brazil too. Like my city, Americana, had a really, really successful women's basketball team. They were state champions, national champions. Like they were the one of the best women's basketball team in the nation. But they moved from Americana to Campinas. The fans did not move with him. They made new fans in Campinas. I dearly miss that team. I didn't got to watch them much, in the stadium because I was, not old enough, and I regret that every day because America had one of the best women's basketball team in the nation, and they left, and the fans did not move with the team. They're in Campinas right now, and they have new fans in Campinas, new ownership, new everything. Like for example, in Americana 11 years ago, there was a new team that came to town. They moved like from Guaratinguetá, and there was a lot of resistance because of like all the soccer fans they lived here and like Americana. They're like, we are real Bronco fans. We're not gonna go for the other team, even though that team was in the second division in Brazilian Championship and the first division in the state of Sao Paulo. And Rio Branco struggling in the second division, the state, and don't have any relevance nationally. And they almost went to the first division, but they left after year one because the fans didn't embrace them. So there's a
Right.
lot of factors.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a whole situation here with the Lookouts here in Chattanooga. They just approved their new stadium last night. They're going to be building a new stadium on the south side of the city. But if they didn't build that new stadium, the MLB was ready to axe the Lookouts. And I think if they were ready to axe the Lookouts, there'd be very few people around here who would consider themselves minor league baseball fans because there's no minor league baseball team to go watch. So it's just all about accessibility too. Like if you don't have the team right there to go watch, why care about them? Like I don't care about like the Idaho Vandals. I
Yeah.
I can't ever watch them. I can't just go and watch them play because they are all the way on the other side of the country. So you know, it's just that connection is extremely important to any community.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. That's one of the things that I really sad about in Brazil is, of course, there was a multitude of things. It's management incompetence, laws that changed, especially in the late 90s, that made soccer teams less powerful and players more empowered and agents more empowered, and that made soccer teams, especially in the countryside where I lived and all over Brazil, weaker, and that made people care less about their home team, their hometown team, and only care about the teams in the capital. So it's unfortunately that's reality. Sports is still an entertainment product that people want to be entertained and want to be have a good product to watch or to care about.
Exactly, man. At the end of the day, it is all about business and all about getting the most people possible to entertain. NASCAR kind of did the same thing. That they left all these short tracks in these small towns to go for big markets, and that's had a varying results, and that's alienated some of the core fan base. But in the long run, they made more money doing it. So it's just it's how capitalism works. It's how
Yeah.
sports business works. But yeah, I guess we got into this with Deshaun Watson. But I guess my final point is if you have a moral qualm with a team, overselling a certain player or perhaps setting a certain ownership group, then I think you have every right to leave. Because if you don't morally support something, it's like asking someone. It's like telling someone 20 years ago, if you want to support the X political party, but like the political party changes over 20 years, and to say you should still be that political party because that's what you were 20 years ago, then that's an asinine, you know, suggestion. So
Yeah, in Brazil, you can make even more the argument than in America because, like, for example, like 4 years ago, the main candidate rival for, let's say, Lula was Alckmin. He was bashing him, and 4 years later, he is the vice president in his ticket with Lula. So politics can change a lot.
oh yeah,
So,
I mean both of the major parties here have changed a lot. So people who used to be either a Democrat or Republican 20 years ago are likely not to identify with either party, and they might have switched parties. They might have gone independent, gone to a third party. So it's people change, the things change, and what you are now isn't what you're going to be in 5 to 10 years. So I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing, and you just have to do what makes you the happiest and helps you sleep at night.
yeah,
But I guess let's head on to college football first. We got to go to this topic, this Kentucky topic, because this is hilarious.
oh,
This is hilarious. I mean, first of all, we have to compare at Tennessee. The synergy that we have in Knoxville is amazing. Between Rick Barnes and Josh Heupel and Tony Vitale and Kelly Harper, with Danny White running the show, there is definitely a nice synergy. The athletics departments all back each other. The fans all love all the other teams. Doesn't seem like it's that way up the road in Lexington, though. It seems like there is some either jealousy or some superiority complex. But John Calipari, the college basketball's most underwhelming head coach, I might remind you, um, he's demanding a new practice facility. And of course, every coach, they're going to demand new practice facilities for recruiting purposes and whatnot. But he took a shot at the football program in on the side.
yeah. He basically said, and I quote, "This is a basketball school. Alabama is a football school. So is Georgia. No disrespect to our football team. I hope they win 10 games and go to bowls. But this is a basketball school. Oh boy.
And
Oh
Mark Stoops
boy."
responded. He responded on Twitter. Hold on, let me pull up this quote real quick because this is hilarious.
I have Mark Stoops' quote. I have it here.
Yeah, go for it.
So he asked, "Basketball school? I thought we compete in the SEC and hashtag 4 straight postseason wins. But the best one, Twitter, by far was from Mark Duffy. Completely out of the blue question. But has Kentucky football team ever lost to St. Peter's?"
No, Kentucky football's lost some bad games, but they haven't lost to St. Peter's.
Oh boy.
But hey, neither one of those teams can beat Tennessee though. So because
Yeah.
John Calipari is like what 3-7 against Rick Barnes in the last 10. Kentucky's beaten Tennessee 3 times in the last 34 years. Yeah. So here's my thought process on this. Kyle Perry was definitely in the wrong for saying that. You shouldn't be putting down other programs at your school. because here's the thing, Mark Stoops has made Kentucky football into a pretty good program. Like, they are now a top 20, 25 program in the entire country. That isn't necessarily championship worthy in the SEC, but it's consistent, right? You can get more money, more revenue, more excitement. It's better for your basketball program if your football program is doing well and leading that excitement into basketball season. I think there's no downsides to having a good football program if you're John Calipari. So I think this just projects some insecurity on the former Calipari. He knows the heat's on him. He knows a large part of the Kentucky fan base wants him gone because they haven't won a national title now in 10 years. They constantly underachieve. Tennessee owns them. They lost their main assistant to Louisville and Kenny Payne. And if Kenny Payne starts beating them, then you're down to all your rivals. You're losing to St. Peter's in the NCAA tournament when you had Oscar Tshiebwe, one of the best players in the entire country. You miss the tournament now like once every 3 to 4 years because of all these one and dones. You can't build any team chemistry, and your offenses ended up just sucking half the time. If I'm John Calipari, yeah, maybe I'm starting to get a little insecure. And meanwhile, Kentucky out here, they're getting more consistent. They're breaking streaks. Mark Stoops finally beating Tennessee every once in a while. He finally is beating Florida now every once in a while. He's got Kentucky fans thinking maybe we can win the SEC East this year, which is absolutely delusional. Kentucky is not winning the SEC East this year, but at least they can think about it for the first time in ever.
They were the runner-ups in the SEC East. That's a remarkable achievement. They were 10-3, and 5-3 in the SEC. And at home, they only lost one game out of 7, and they finished the season with a 4-game winning streak. Those are positive numbers.
That one loss was to.
What?
I wonder who that one home loss was to.
Oh yeah, I wonder who that was.
It could not have been a game where they had the ball for 47 minutes and set a record for time of possession in a loss.
Yes, but they don't have. But Kentucky don't have Hendon Hooker.
They do not have Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker owns Lexington, Kentucky. But anyway, but outside of that, and that should be another really good game this year, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Neyland. I think it's October 29th, or 22nd. But anyway.
But my point is, can we all learn that making lifetime contracts in sports does not work? It's really clear that the time for John Calipari in Kentucky is done. It's like when the couple know they should get divorced, but they don't because they don't have, I guess, the financial means, or they're just too entangled, or they just adapt to living separate lives, even though under the law they're still married. But they're clearly already a divorced couple. They're living in the same house. That's Kentucky basketball and John Calipari, in my opinion. They're a divorced couple.
John Calipari's sleeping on the couch right now.
Yeah, that's why he's taking shots at, I guess, the wife, which is Kentucky Athletics. They're like, I need, a better couch. I need a better living room.
The Kentucky Athletics. Mark Stoops is sleeping in the bedroom with Kentucky Athletics while Calipari's sitting on the couch.
Yeah. So and then Mark Stoops are like, yeah, we win 4 straight postseason wins. We are 10-3. So you call this a basketball school, but where is the success of the basketball program to show for? I mean, when you have to repeat twice, this is a basketball school, it's clearly insecurity that you don't know if you're truly a basketball school, because when you have to repeat something over and over, it's because you yourself don't believe.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Because when was the last time they even won a? I gotta look this up for a second. It's been 20. When was the last time that Kentucky won the SEC tournament?
2008.
2018 was the last time they won the SEC men's tournament, and that used to be called the Kentucky Invitational. They won it for 4 straight years, from 15 through 18. They haven't even won the conference regular season since 2020, and that was in a COVID year. So does that really count? No. 2017, really, the last normal college basketball season where they won the SEC regular season championship. Kentucky isn't exactly dominant anymore. Like, uh, you know,
That's why he has to keep repeating because he's like maybe it's like saying like if you
what was the last
tell
year that they went to the Final Four?
2013, 2014,
It's 2015.
2015, 2014, 2015.
Yeah, which for all the talent that they've had, you're telling me it's been 7 years? That's been Has they've been to the Final Four?
And it's funny on the same quote that the Calipari said like, oh, this is a basketball school. Alabama is a football school. So did Georgia. They literally been to the college football playoff last season, so they can call themselves a football school because they were in the college football national championship running against each other, Alabama and Georgia. Where was Kentucky in basketball in March Madness
I
in
mean,
the
Georgia's
Final
been to the
Four?
top every year since 2017. Alabama's won 6 out of the last 11, and they've only missed one playoff. Only one playoff for Alabama. Kentucky is not in that same class at all. I mean, Kentucky really hasn't even been the most successful SEC program of the past 5 years. That's been Auburn. Like, seriously, Auburn's been a more successful program than Kentucky the past 5 years.
Yeah, I mean they made the Final Four. I guess was like 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They've won more SEC tournaments. They've won more SEC championships.
I mean, despite all the question about all the problems he had with allegations and all the question he did, is Bruce Pearl best coach than John Calipari right now?
Oh, he's always been a better coach than John Calipari. I mean, he owned him when he was at Memphis and he was at Tennessee. He's owned him now at Auburn versus Kentucky. He's been a better coach.
Yeah, it just makes me sad that he has to keep picking fights with his own athletics program and show how he was a really could have been a legendary college basketball coach, but somehow he got lost in the way. Maybe he tried to get early in the one and done, but he did it in a way that kind of jeopardized the long run of the program. Maybe he got ahead of himself. Maybe he lost track of I don't know, but it's sad because everybody thought John Calipari was going to be the Nick Saban or even the Nick Saban of college basketball, but clearly he isn't.
Yeah, I mean, the Nick Saban of college basketball just retired. That was Coach K. He
Yeah,
had 5 national titles, and now Bill Self, he has 2 titles. Mark Few, I mean, he can't win a national title to save his life. Maybe this is the year for Gonzaga. We'll have to wait and see. And obviously I know we can't really talk about. I know Rick Barnes, he doesn't win in the postseason either. I mean, he did win a conference title, but he couldn't get it done. He can't get it done in the NCAA tournament. But still, Rick Barnes doesn't run around calling Tennessee a basketball school. He understands that basketball is only one part of the bigger picture at Tennessee, and ultimately the football program is what everyone wants to see truly get back to the top at Tennessee. But I wouldn't mind if basketball also made their deep run as well.
and one person that would be kind of alert is like Mitch Barnhart. That's the Kentucky athletics director, because when you start to have this fights and this kind of instability between basketball and football programs, is where the AD step in. That's why Danny White was, I think, such a good hire for Tennessee because he seemed to get the athletic. Of course he got. I think he got a really good run. Philip Fulmer did a good job. He got a good hires. Tony Vitello was hired under Philip Fulmer. So Kelly Harper, but Danny White made something good and improved.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Tennessee, I mean, he has stabilized the program. I mean, we were an absolute dumpster fire 18 months ago. And now Tennessee is not. Tennessee is going in the right direction. We have one of the best NIL programs with Spire off the cuff. It's helping our recruiting. All ships appear to be heading in the right direction. So hopefully we begin seeing the rewards of that this fall and 3 weeks from tonight when the Vols take on Ball State. And, hopefully we continue to own Kentucky in all of our various sports.
Yeah. And I guess Tennessee, of course, there's some questioning, there's some injuries that got in this in this preseason, in this fall practice. But if it's overall it's going really quiet, you
Mhm.
know. But of course, people want to see. I saw an SEC network segment that some analyst was saying that Tennessee can go even higher than 10-2.
Yeah, I think that's Greg McElroy. Literally saying he's picking up the Vols to go 11-2 in the SEC East, which we need to pump the brakes on that because we and this is honestly my hot take, and I'll save that for a little bit, but
So, so let's go with Big Ten analysis. That's our conference. I mean, we talked Big Ten last week. Go Big 12,
Big 12.
or maybe the last time they can call themselves the Big 12 because we don't know if you're gonna keep the 12 members in place.
Well,
Probably
there will be 12 members. So basically, when Oklahoma and Texas leave, they're going to add Cincinnati, UCF. Who are the other two? They're adding BYU, and they're adding. It's not Boise that they're adding. It's Houston. Houston is the fourth team they're adding. They will have 12 teams again, but they're going to be not on the same level at all as an SEC or a Big Ten.
So last year, the Oklahoma State was the winner of the conference. They went 8-1 in conference. Overall, they went 11-1. They finished ranked number 7.
And Baylor
And
beat them in the Big 12 title game.
yeah, the title game was won by Baylor in really good match. The question is, do you think the Cowboys or even the Bears can kind of keep this going? But Texas, I mean, everybody's going to expect Texas to be better. I mean, with all the NIL and all the expectation under Steve Sarkisian, they gotta be competitive, at least make to the Big 12 conference title game.
See, though, but I just don't trust. I mean, they have Quinn Ewers. Ewers now as their quarterback. So we're about to see if he has been worth the hype. Remember, he went to Ohio State, got $1 million, and said, you know what? I'm going back home. I'm going to Texas. And then Arch Manning's coming next year. So a lot of pressure on Ewers. Ewers has got to perform this year. Because otherwise, if he sucks this year, every single Longhorn fan is going to be screaming for Arch Manning next offseason. So, you know, and especially for Sarkisian too, because we got to remember, they went 5-7 last year. They lost to Kansas. Okay, they lost to Kansas. So first and foremost, you can't lose to Kansas again.
The only win Kansas got all season
was Texas. Yeah, you can't lose that game. But Texas has a pretty hard schedule. They start off with Louisiana Monroe, first game. They should win that, but second game coming to Austin is Alabama. And I'm going to be real with you, Gus. I think Alabama is going to smoke Texas. I don't think this game is going to be close at all. I think Alabama is going to win that game by 4+ possessions.
I mean, it's a former coordinator, a former assistant faces Nick Saban again. I know Jimbo Fisher finished the streak,
and
but
I don't added to that too. So.
Yeah, added to that too. So I guess with assistants, I guess it's 2-1 in the last 3 games, but I don't see Steve Sarkisian kind of the same level. I think the game might be competitive in the first half, but I don't see Texas beating Alabama. They'll have to play perfect, and I don't see them doing it.
Bijan Robinson, now he is their best, but Bijan Robinson legitimately is one of the best running backs in the country. He's going to have a huge game for Texas, and Alabama is going to be close, and they're going to have to find a way to get to Bryce Young. They're going to have to find a way to pressure him. They got to find a way to be at least a little bit better on defense. Not a little bit, a lot better. Because one problem Texas had last year is they would get out to leads and then they would just collapse. Remember, they had a 27-point lead on Texas. They blew big leads to Kansas State. They blew a big lead, I believe, to Oklahoma State. They blew some massive leads last year, and that really cost them in the long run in their season because they should have won 8 or 9 games last year, but they just could not hold on to a lead to save their life. And if you're gonna win, because the Big 12 still has some really good teams, they got to find a way to hold on to some games. So I think when you look at the schedule, I have so they I think this is a loss. Texas San Antonio in this third game, I think that's a win. I think they beat Texas Tech. I think they beat West Virginia. Oklahoma. Now, Oklahoma to me is an interesting team because they're still ranked in the top 10. They still have a lot of talent, but Brent Venables has never been a head coach before. And I think Oklahoma's offense is going to take a significant step back this year because there's no longer Lincoln Riley. The defense may take a step forward. But honestly, though, I think Texas beats Oklahoma. So I have Texas being the Sooners.
I think, and I think this is a game that Steve Sarkisian needs to win.
Yeah.
It's like, do you remember when we talk about Nebraska? You know how they had to win. I think I don't remember that game exactly, but I think
first week, that Northwestern game first week.
Yeah. I think they gotta win Oklahoma on the road. I think if they win this game, even if let's say they will go 6-6 or 7-5, I think Steve Sarkisian keep his job if he wins Oklahoma on the road. I think this is a must-win game not only for Texas, but especially for Steve Sarkisian, because if he's able to beat his biggest rival on the road, I know it's not a Lincoln Riley Oklahoma anymore, but still is the Sooners.
Yeah. So my prediction for Texas, I have them at 8-4. My losses are Alabama, at Oklahoma State, at Kansas State, and Baylor.
I'm also gonna have them at 8-4, but instead of Kansas State, they lose to Kansas Jayhawks.
They're not losing. I think they will not lose to Kansas again. I think they'll take care of Kansas this time. For their sake, they will take care of Kansas.
I mean, it's fair because I thought Steve Sarkisian was gonna get fired after game because that's what happened with Charlie Strong. When he lost to Kansas, he got fired. So I guess Steve Sarkisian got a bigger trust from the boosters and the athletics department at Texas. But that's a game. I only say that because I have a friend, Italo best friend, who went to Jayhawks. That's why I kind of rooting for the Jayhawks. But that's true. I think they're gonna take. I think 8-4. I think 8-4. It's a step further. I think that will make Steve Sarkisian kind of like better. I think will be kind of staying his job. Even in 7-5, I think he only stays 7-5 if he beats Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that game definitely will get him an extra game. But I think, in terms of the Big 12 as a whole, I think the 5 teams to watch, remember, there's only 10 teams. Of course, you have Texas. We talked about Oklahoma. Yeah, they're replacing a lot. Now they got Brent Venables. But Oklahoma State and Baylor, they're the 2 teams that made the Big 12 title game last year. I think they're going to be really, really good again. Oklahoma State has Spencer Sanders again at quarterback. They do have to replace a lot on the defense, so that is a potential concern. But Baylor, they return a lot. And Dave Aranda is a superstar coach. I'm kind of surprised they were able to keep him last offseason. I think Dave Aranda is one of those guys who might be coaching in the SEC eventually. But Baylor does have kind of a hard start to the schedule, though. Their second week, they have to go to BYU. And that is honestly low-key one of the most underrated non-con games of the entire season. Baylor at BYU. And eventually that's going to be a conference game here in a couple of years. Because BYU always is a tough place to go play. Tennessee was supposed to go there next year, but they bought themselves out of that game, which I don't like. I wanted to see them get a chance at revenge for 2019. But, but I think the wild card team here is Kansas State. I think Kansas State has a sneaky good roster this year. And they get a lot of these tough games at home. They get Oklahoma State at home. They get Texas at home. They get Baylor. Well, they have to go to Baylor, but they get a lot of interesting games. And of course, Kansas State has had Oklahoma's number. They have beaten Oklahoma a couple of times over the past 5 years. So, Kansas State is watch out for K-State. That's a sneaky good team to me.
I think my sneaky team will be West Virginia. I think they're gonna be a 8-5 or even a 9-4 team. I think they can improve.
They do have JT Daniels now. They do have JT Daniels at quarterback, but what's his name? It's not right. Is it Riley Neal? Let me make sure I know. I have that right. His last name is Neal. Let's see. West Virginia.
I know they have a tough start with.
Neal Brown.
I know they have a tough start play on the road versus Pitt, but then they got Kansas at home. Then they face Townsend. I never heard of his program before. Townsend.
They're from
What?
they're from Baltimore at Towson.
And then they play Virginia Tech and Texas on the road back to back. I think they can I think they can get Virginia Tech. Maybe Texas, probably not. But I see them improving. I think West Virginia, they were a good couple of years ago. I think they can get back on track. I mean, you said it right. They have JT Daniels, which didn't work in Georgia, but he might work in West Virginia.
Maybe. Like, if I had to pick their schedule, I think they'll lose to Pittsburgh on opening night. I think it's 0-1. I think they beat Kansas and Towson 2-1. I think they beat Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech, remember, they have a new coach too. They got Brent Pry from Penn State. I think they're in a transition this year. I'm going to go 3-1 there. I think they lose at Texas 3-2. I think they lose at home to Baylor 3-3. I think they lose at Texas Tech 3-4. I do have them being TCU 4-4. I think they lose at Iowa State 4-5. I think they get one of Oklahoma or Kansas State. They get one of those games, so 5-6. I have them going 5-7. I'm not too high on West Virginia, to be honest. They have a lot of questions. Neal Brown has not been as good as I thought he would be at West Virginia. They are nowhere near the Dana Holgorsen days from a couple of years ago. But you never know. Like, West Virginia is a hard place to play. They're so far geographically removed from the rest of the Big 12 that when teams go over there, they tend to get in dogfights or lose to West Virginia.
That's why I have them losing to Texas Tech, and I have them winning Texas Tech and maybe TCU. You got them winning or losing TCU?
I have them beating TCU.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I'm gonna go 6-6. I think it's gonna go 6-6. I think they're gonna beat Texas Tech. So,
quick note too on TCU. I think they're about to enter a dark age. I did not like their hire, Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes, I mean, he had some pretty good years at SMU, but I think after the golden era of Gary Patterson and not getting some of those opportunities to play for national championships, I think that's going to haunt TCU for a very long time, and it's going to be a long time before they truly have another chance to be a top 5-10 team.
They kind of came close to college football playoff. I think I don't remember which year.
Yeah, it was 2014. It was the very first year. Remember, they were ranked third heading to the final season. They won their final game 55-3, and they got kicked out. So, which I still feel horrible for them that happened.
Yeah, but the committee.
Yeah, it's like we created 2 more spots to get some of these smaller teams a chance, and just finally last year, Cincinnati got a chance. So, TCU was one of those teams that was supposed to benefit, and it didn't benefit. So, I mean, it's just big time college football, and this is why we got to have like at least a 12-team playoff, so more teams can have a chance at it. But it's been an Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson oligarchy. So,
and now Georgia too, I think is going to join the oligarchy.
Yeah,
it kind of did. I think they made the college football playoff. I was like 2 times in the last 4 years, 2017 and 2021, and they came out close several times when they lost to like the SEC championship.
Yeah, they would have won in 2018 or 2019. They would have made it too.
Yeah, so I think kind of I'll add Georgia into this kind of like the dynasties or like the royalty of college football programs. But that's the problem with the Big 12. I mean, we mentioned several programs in this royalty, none of the Big 12, and now with
Oklahoma made it for multiple years in a row, so they are kind of part of that oligarchy too.
Yeah, that's true, but
they're about to lose it.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Big 12 is about to lose their only royalty college football program. So, do you think they really, and now Oklahoma, let's be real, they're not going to make the college football playoff this year. So, do you think, again, the Big 12 is not going to make it into the college football playoff.
That's my current prediction. Out of the 4 teams I have making it, none of them are from the Big 12.
Yeah,
I think they get left out because I think you're going to see potentially the Big 10 or the SEC get 2 in, and that's only going to leave a spot for 2 other conferences because 3 of the 4 spots are going to be SEC or Big 10, and that leaves 1 other spot for the 3 other conferences. One of those, I think that will go to an ACC or a Pac-12 team. I don't think that's going to go to a Big 12 team because I think the problem with the Big 12 is there's no one dominant team, so they're going to beat up by each other. They're all going to have at least 1 to 2 losses, and the Big 12 unfortunately just does not have the strength of schedule comparatively to overcome what you need to be in the top 4.
yeah. Last year Baylor, at the end came close, but it was kind of like close in terms of ranking. But even with losses, I don't think nobody, was like saying Baylor should have made it. There was no argument that was like, gee, Baylor should have made it. Like the 4 teams that made it was undeniable.
Oklahoma State, if they had won, I think they would have had an argument to get over Cincinnati potentially,
Yeah.
but that they came up short. So we'll see we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Mike Gundy always came up short, right? That's the thing. Like everybody thinks, oh, this is gonna be the year that Mike Gundy finally makes to the playoff, and boy, they blow it.
Yeah, they always come short. Like 2011, they had it made and they lose out in the road to Iowa State. That's the best season they've ever had, and it's all ruined by one Friday night in Ames, Iowa. And that's a team too to watch is Iowa State. I don't think they'll be a Big 12 contender, but Matt Campbell a couple of years ago had them in the top. 2 years ago finished in the top 10. Last year was preseason top 10, but Iowa State did not live up to expectations last year. They lost Brees Hall. Can Iowa State recapture that magic at all? And can Matt Campbell make himself a hot commodity again in the coaching market? Because a lot of teams wanted him a couple of years ago, and now you don't hear his name come up at all.
Yeah, and there was even I remember that Iowa and Iowa State game. I think was last year. I think they're high. Their their moment of last season was when they defeat Iowa, and when Iowa was in the top 4. I think I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm trying to think, what teams have we not talked about? Texas Tech, they have a first-year head coach, Joey McGuire. He's only been a head coach on the high school level in Texas. So this will be an interesting story to watch to see if they have any success with him because, historically when colleges have gone after a high school coach, Notre Dame did this once back in the 80s. It didn't work out too well. The college game is radically different from the high school game, especially in a state like Texas. So we'll see if that works out for Texas Tech.
Just to correct myself, Iowa defeated Iowa State, so I guess I that was my correction. But that's true. I mean, you said it right because not all high school coaches can work in the college level, but it's a try. I mean, he has success in Texas high school level, which is the best in the nation, but that doesn't guarantee that he will succeed in college.
Oh, absolutely. So Texas Tech, I don't expect a ton from them this year, but we'll see what he can do. Maybe, of course, I've heard the recruiting has been really, really good so far. So maybe in the next couple of years, Texas Tech can get something going. Of course, their problem was for a long time they had amazing offenses, but horrifically bad defenses. Especially back to the days of Kingsbury. They had Patrick Mahomes throwing 40 touchdowns a year, and they were going 5-7 because they had no defense.
Oh yeah, that's why Patrick Mahomes maybe was drafted so low because he put up good numbers, but he didn't have a good overall team to back him up. But in terms of predictions, I think the Big 12 title game is going to be Oklahoma State and Texas, and I think the Longhorns win the conference, but they don't make it to the college football playoffs.
I'm going to go Oklahoma State, Baylor. I think Oklahoma State gets their revenge and wins the Big 12 title, but I don't think that's going to be enough, and they'll end up in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah, so that's our. Let me just say quick shout outs to the people watching and listening. Cristiano Silva, happy. We're gonna talk about Palmeiras really soon. What a game that was last night. Miguel Dalari and Miguel Ribeiro, Bruno Slonik, big Giants fan. So that's our viewers on our live streaming as well, and also big shout out to people listening on us on our Spotify channel. But moving on to the baseball side of it, because tonight is the one of the best ideas Major League Baseball had, and I say in this decade, the Field of Dreams game. They're in the bottom of the seventh inning, Cubs leading by two, 4 runs, 2 runs versus I know the teams they pick sucked because both the Chicago Cubs and Cincinnati Reds season are really bad, but geographically it makes sense because the closest teams to Iowa.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and still like it still looks great on TV. That's still a filled out stadium. Those two fan bases are still excited to be there. I mean, you know, for this one night, it doesn't really matter what your season's been like. Everyone wants to win this game because it's special. You only really get one chance to play out in the cornfields of Iowa with that just ideal setting. I mean, that is true Americana. That's true baseball. That's what the sport is meant to look like. And because like I still remember the White Sox being the Yankees in a walk-off last year. Like that was an amazing game. It doesn't matter to me if the White Sox and Yankees, neither one of them won the World Series. That game was awesome last year, and it's awesome to see them do it again. I mean, and then again, it doesn't feel magical the same way as it did last year because last year was just so cool and such a unique idea. But I really hope the MLB keeps this moving forward.
I I would say I think NBA and the NFL should adopt that. I think the NFL definitely should make a regular season game in Canton, Ohio. I think that should be embraced, especially picking like two historical franchises like Packers and the Cardinals, or maybe Cowboys and the Steelers, something like that.
I
Make
would
it.
do a Friday Night Lights game, have marching bands, limit the crowd to only like a couple of thousand, like a high school game, and just have like the bands blaring in the background, and you know, like just make it feel like a high school football game, but it's NFL.
And the NBA, do you think should be like a kind of like a court, like displaying like kind of like New York courts, like like maybe kind of like a street game.
Yeah, that would be my idea for the NBA. And then for the NHL, they do the Winter Classics, they play outside, so they already do something like this.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense because when you create like this magical environment that set aside one, because the regular season, I mean, I know the NFL, it kind of, in the in college football as well, kind of, it's like a win or go home, especially more college football. But in the NFL, it's like 17 games. But when you have longer seasons like the NBA and especially the Major League Baseball, you got to have those moments during the regular season that it's kind of like set aside a game, make it special. Like everybody remembers the Field of Dreams game last season. I think that's the most remarkable regular season Major League game in over 20 years.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I can't recall most games that happened but beyond a week ago from this season. But I still remember that game just from how different it was because every other game just blends in.
So, but shut up. But again, it's at least there's two VFLs and one Brazilian, young Gomez for the Cubs.
Oh, for sure. And there's still a lot of young players, and perhaps they will, you know, develop and they can get back to where they were a couple of years ago.
And speaking still on the Major League Baseball side, the New York Mets took a seven game lead over the Braves in the NL East. I mean, it looks like the Braves are the second best team in National League. I think that's what happens when you have a owner kind of like Steve Cohen that invests a lot of money. They expect results, and the Mets are delivering it. But I don't see the Mets still quite yet in the same level as the Dodgers and the Yankees. I don't see yet.
I don't know, I think the Mets have been playing a lot better than the Yankees, though. Like the Yankees have not played that. They're 500 over the past 44 games. So yeah, the Mets are playing a lot better than the Yankees right now. But yeah, for the Mets, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. The Mets, they always seem to do this where they get out to a largely early and they kind of choke it away to the Braves. But they faced the Braves head on, and they took control. I mean, they've had 2 series for the past 3 weeks, and they only lost 2 games in those 2 series. Uh, Very, very impressive. The Braves pitching did not hold up in this series. They really were able to stifle our offense. And right now, they're definitely on control of the NL East. The Braves, they just got a 2-game sweep with the Red Sox, so that was good to see. Some really big hitting from Austin Riley, and last night from our rookie Vaughn Grissom. His first ever pitch ever that he's seen the MLB, smacked it over the Green Monster with an amazing moment. But it's going to be a fun race down the stretch. I think the Mets will pull it off, but I think the Braves are going to get that first wild card spot, and we could see them meet up again in the postseason potentially.
Oh yeah, I think so too. I think the there's gonna be at least one NL East team. Now it's two, the Braves and the Phillies. But I think the Padres are gonna get the second spot, especially after all the acquisition in during the before the trade the MLB trade deadline. I think Bell and Soto are gonna make a huge difference. For me, the NL wild card are gonna be Braves and Padres.
I agree. And then for that last spot, it's definitely wide open because the Cardinals now have taken back the NL Central, so the Brewers now are only a game behind. So that NL Central is going to be super, super important. And still, the teams I'm most watching, in the AL, the Mariners. I really, now that I've seen the Braves win a World Series, I'm still rooting for the Braves first. Obviously, I want them to win another World Series, but low key, I want the Mariners now to win one. I would love to see them break their horrifically bad postseason drought and make it into the postseason.
But the crazy of all is that the team tied only at 1.5 game behind all the Mariners are the Baltimore Orioles. Of all teams,
I
the
know.
Orioles are fighting for a playoff spot. That's insane. Of how their payroll are so low and how they're like making trades to like rebuild, and they're the fourth team in the American League wildcard fight.
Right. Well, I think a lot of it started with what's his name? It's Cruz. It can't remember what his first name is, but
Jose Cruz. Oh,
yep.
Nelson Cruz.
Nelson, yeah. He's been insane for them, and I really feels like when he got onto the roster, that really pushed that team ahead, and it seems like that they've really been able to be that competitive. I mean, think about it. What's weird is the only team in the NL East right now that's not competing for a playoff spot is the Red Sox. And then the Red Sox are still only 5 games behind, but their pitching is terrible.
Yeah. So for me in the AL, I still think that Toronto Blue Jays are gonna make it. They have a young, vibrant roster. I think they're gonna make it. But the second spot, I hope. I would love to see the Mariners breaking their drought in the playoff, but I, I don't know. I still think maybe the Rays. The Rays are always find a way to make it.
That's true. And the Twins are only a game behind. They can make it. White Sox are only 3 games behind. I know our friend Jason's been insanely critical this year of the White Sox, but hey, they're at 500. They're right there. So they got a shot. The only teams that really don't have a shot are the Rangers, Angels, Royals, Tigers, and Athletics. So,
It's just sad. It's just really sad, again, to see two big talents like Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in an organization that keeps wasting talent and always in the bottom. They had a game where they scored 8 home runs and lost.
yeah. Just it's really mind-boggling. It's really just incredible to watch. It's incredible to think about how the Angels constantly waste away talent. But we only have what? We only have 8 weeks left of the regular season, so it's go time now for all these playoff teams.
Yeah, and finish up with American topics. I have some two news out this NBA off season. One report says that the Lakers had a meeting with the Lakers organization had a big meeting, including LeBron James, his agent Rich Paul, the new head coach Darvin Ham, and Rob Pelinka. And it's interesting things that came out of there. I mean, especially the things they kind of like the direction they're going to, more commitment, better, playing with toughness, and kind of like, and sources says that LeBron James drill home the importance of consistent competitiveness and cohesion, and focus for the future Hall of Fame is very competitive every night in order to give themselves a competing. But it's interesting to see like consistent competitiveness and cohesion. So do you think he's kind of saying that all the players that they got, especially Russell Westbrook, did not show that cohesion and competitiveness that he expected?
Yeah, I mean, just all the as I said last week. I mean, it felt like that they had a nursing home on their roster. Most of their players were over the age of 30, and a lot of them they're there for personal glory. They're wearing the Lakers uniform. They want the Hollywood stars, and LeBron ain't gonna put up with that. LeBron is the GM on the court. LeBron's the GM off the court. LeBron tends to get what he wants, and he ain't gonna settle around for a 33 and 49 when he knows that like any slight, ruins his legacy because everyone is always constantly talking about his legacy. And he knows that this is one of his last true opportunities to make a playoff run. And I'm not convinced he's going to make another deep playoff run. I mean, I know he still averaged 30-8 last year, but that wasn't an efficient 30-8. He doesn't play great defense anymore. And I think they can be a playoff team, obviously, as long as you have LeBron. I mean, you're a playoff contender, but this isn't prime LeBron anymore. And it's smart that he wants to start focusing around Anthony Davis because Anthony Davis at this point has potential to be the better player. But who are you going to get to come around? Because a lot of players have played with LeBron, and it's notoriously been said that it's hard to play with LeBron because LeBron, he's the star. He gets all the attention. And by proxy, if you're on the team with LeBron, you get all the attention too for NBA media. If you play for the Charlotte Hornets, you can go under the radar because no one's watching you. If you play for the Detroit Pistons, no one's watching you. So you can go under the radar. But if you play with LeBron James wherever he's at, then all the attention's going to be on you. If Russell Westbrook had a season with Detroit last year, no one would care. But because he had the season that he had with LeBron James in Los Angeles, everyone cares because it was with LeBron. And I think that's going to be one of the problems he's going to run into because people are going to start realizing, well, LeBron, he's getting older and older. He's not getting any younger. He's not getting any better. Meanwhile, we could go play with a guy like Giannis, a guy who isn't going to publicly throw you under the bus in Milwaukee and actually compete for championships.
And to some extent, I think also, Rob Pelinka, he should start questioning. You said LeBron is the GM on the court, but LeBron as like an assistant GM or acting GM in some ways, it's kind of weakening the Lakers. Westbrook was his choice. It wasn't the Lakers' choice; it was LeBron's choice. Even Carmelo Anthony he brought into town, to make even more like a nursing home. So maybe Pelinka should question: Hey, LeBron, do you think your choices were good last season? Maybe you should rethink some of your choices.
Yeah, maybe you should let the GM be the GM. But
yeah,
you can do that if you have LeBron James, because LeBron James is going to raise hell until he gets what he wants. So, I just don't see it working out long term. I know they have their bubble championship, but I mean, I just don't think that counts the same as the other championships. It wasn't in front of fans. I barely even remember that postseason.
Yeah, I think the Lake. I mean, if LeBron maybe play one, two, even three season tops for the Lakers, ended up with no championships. That's a big chance that happening. Maybe he will be remembered as like this kind of big expectation under delivered player for the Lakers. Nobody will remember him. Especially with when you have a franchise that had Magic Johnson, uh,
Kobe, you had
Kobe,
Shaq, you had Kareem
Kareem.
Abdul-Jabbar. Um, I mean, LeBron James, by Lakers standards, he's not even a top 3 player.
Yeah. So
So
he, so that's why he acting more desperate than normal because he wants to make his impact on the court in LA bigger than what he is right now. It's one bubble championship.
plus, he's still angling and preparing for his post basketball career. He wants to be an actor. He wants to have a giant entertainment. But I wouldn't be shocked if he wants to get into politics eventually. Of course, Space Jam 2 sucked. So, I mean, I think it's exciting from a financial standpoint, but critically, everyone panned it. I couldn't even finish the movie. It was so bad. Um, you know, I did. I just I don't know if LeBron is completely 100% focused on basketball when making these decisions, and I think it's going to prevent him from truly being competitive in the modern NBA, where we're seeing a return to teams mattering. Like the Warriors, yes, they had Steph Curry, but that was a team effort to win the NBA championship last year. The Celtics making the NBA finals, that was a team. That wasn't one or two superstars. That was a whole team contributing. We're seeing the return of teams. Where it's not just about superstars anymore, which is what the NBA has desperately needed because honestly, Loki was ruining the game to have individual superstars running the league.
Oh, yeah, 100% agree. And I feel like, that's why LeBron should rethink some of his moves to make Lakers a better team, not a better starting five, because, you have to really consider, your roster as a whole. The Warriors had a really good bench, the Celtics had a decent bench. So you can't sacrifice the bench to get one or two players. You have to the whole.
I think you're going in and out, Gus, from your connection.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's fine. But we do have one last NBA topic, though. KD to the Celtics potentially. That's been rumored for a while. Still hasn't been. I feel like this NBA trade season's been going a lot slower. It feels like we have a lot of bombs in July normally. We're just kind of waiting around right now, seeing what's going to happen, seeing if it's going to happen. Of course, the Nets had a lot of problems last year. They got swept by the Celtics, and ironically, the Celtics are looking to bring in potentially Kevin Durant, who I think if he were to go to Boston, that's your title favorite next year because that's an amazing roster right now. But they are missing, despite what I just said about teams mattering more than superstars, they are missing a superstar, and KD would I put them over the top. I feel like.
That would be a way better destination than the Golden State Warriors. And to think about it, what better team for KD to show that he can win a championship? Because everybody says, like, "Oh, he won championships," but that was because of the great roster that the Golden State Warriors had. If he wins with the Celtics, they'll be like, "No, I won also because of my talent, not just because I was in a great team." Not saying that the Celtics don't have a good team, they do, but I think he will prove he can win with multiple franchises.
Yeah, but still, I mean, he would have a loaded roster though in Boston. It's not like he's been. It's not like LeBron, where like when LeBron was in his prime, he could carry the Cavs all the way to the finals by himself. Um, KD is not on LeBron's level, just historically, not really ever. I mean, right now it's close, and KD actually might be the better player right now, but that doesn't make him the better player overall throughout their entirety of their careers. It's just not close. KD doesn't have the mental aptitude, I feel like, to truly be um, a goat to be one of the top 3 or 4 players of all time. He has that potential. He has the talent. So one of the most talented players we've ever seen. But unfortunately, just time and time again, he just doesn't have the dog in him to take over late in a postseason game. I mean, we've seen it occasionally. Like I think about the game 7 against the Bucks, where he scored 48. And he was awesome in that game. He still didn't win though, and that matters more than anything else.
And that came up because of like 3 centimeters because he made the shot in the line. That was so cruel. That was
Very cruel.
and and to final point in the NBA, also, I think that was a great move by the organization to retire the number 6 in across the NBA. That was Bill Russell's number. He passed away recently. I think his number should be retired.
Oh yeah.
Like he was a Jackie Robinson of the NBA. He was a legendary player, coach. He was also a remarkable activist. He broke barriers as a black uh, as a really great black basketball player. I think it's really a great honor
Yeah,
to
and he endured so much abuse too during his time in the league. So it's and obviously people like have this debate of well, the era he played in wasn't so good, but that doesn't matter. I mean, the dude has 11 rings. He is probably one of the greatest rebounders of all time, and most importantly, as you said, really broke a barrier, really paved the way for other black athletes to come in. And now, without him, we wouldn't have Michael Jordan, we wouldn't have LeBron, we wouldn't have all Kobe and all these other great players that would come on later. So, Bill Russell obviously is a legend. He will always be a legend, and will go down as one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, that's why he was always in the trophy ceremony. And when he passed away, that was something that make him in the same standard as Jackie Robinson. I think that was a great move by the NBA.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's time to head down to Brazil.
Yeah, in Brazil, it was Libertadores quarterfinals week. 2 big games, at least in the state of Sao Paulo. Corinthians, they had a really big challenge. They needed to win by 2 goals to make it to penalty kicks, but they lost 1-0. Pedro scored in the second half. I mean, Corinthians played really well, better than I expect in the first 30 minutes. They had 3 great opportunities, but in the end, they couldn't capitalize on that performance, because they couldn't shot on goal. They couldn't, create any trouble for the Flamingos defense. So in the end, in the second half, they were tired. They had a lot of problems that they had throughout the season, which like physical problems. And then Flamengo is just a better team. When they find space, they had really amazing players like Arrascaeta, which for me is the best player in not only South America but the entire Americas. I'm sad that he's from Uruguay. He'll be a starter in the Brazil national team. That's for sure. If De Arrascaeta was a Brazilian, he'll be a starter in the Brazil team. I mean, a lot of people be arguing, no, it should be Paquetá or even Neymar, like, of course, Neymar, but it should be, Rafinha or Firmino. No, if De Arrascaeta was a Brazilian, he'll be a starter in Tite's team. But he's from Uruguay, so lucky for the Uruguayans to have such a talented player like Georgian De Arrascaeta, who made a difference and made the assist for Pedro, who scored the winning goal. Flamengo in the semifinals. They will face Vélez Sarsfield from Argentina, who defeated Talleres. Flamengo should be heavily favored. Vélez Sarsfield is not playing well. They're kind of like a more defense team. They're in 21st spot in the Argentinian league, but the problem is CONMEBOL. I'm scared they don't want to see another Brazilian final again, so they will put some tricks out of the hat, especially with refereeing, to not make that. That's what I'm scared of, and that's what a lot of Brazilian, fans, soccer fans, and journalists are scared of. That CONMEBOL are gonna put some tricks out of the hat and make an Argentinian team into the finals. That's what I'm scared of.
Yeah, I think if you're a Brazilian team in this competition, you have to focus on playing clean, make sure you're playing disciplined, and don't give them any wiggle room to try to call stuff against you.
Yeah. But the quarterfinals game of the week was Palmeiras Atlético Mineiro. They tied 2-2 in the first leg with Palmeiras scoring the winning goal in the final in the stoppage time. And then the second game, Palmeiras got a red card in the 29th minute, so Atlético Mineiro had one more player, like Palmeiras had one player down, but Atlético Mineiro couldn't capitalize on that. They had, you know, more shots on target, 7-2, more possession, 68-32, and especially they had more chances in the end of the game. They had uh, two really big chances on the last 5 minutes. When they couldn't capitalize, the game finished scoreless. And on a penalty kicks, Palmeiras win 6-5. They advanced to their third semifinals, their third straight semifinals in Libertadores, and they're the favorites to win whoever they face. It looks like I don't know who's gonna be because Estudiantes and Atlético Paranaense are tied scoreless. Their first game was also 0-0. Looks like they're going to penalties. I hope Atlético Paranaense wins because it'll be Felipao versus Abel Ferreira, and both are one is already a legend in Palmeiras. He won the first Libertadores for Palmeiras in 1999. He won another titles for Palmeiras. He was a legend, and now he might face Abel Ferreira, which is turning into a Palmeiras coaching legend. Won two Libertadores, won back-to-back Libertadores, one Brazilian Cup, won the Paulista Cup. So it will be a great matchup, but still scoreless in Argentina, 0-0. But I think, but my prediction is going to be Palmeiras, Atlético Paranaense, Flamengo, and Vélez Sarsfield, and I think the final for the second straight year are gonna be the two best teams in South America today, which is Flamengo and Palmeiras. I think those two teams, and they're different in their way. Like Flamengo have more offensive talent. They have more playmakers like Arrascaeta, as I mentioned, Gabigol, which can get a goal. He and Pedro, who was a reserve, who was in the bench in the beginning of the season, now scoring goals. Tite really wants to, call Pedro to the national team, but he needs to see more action from Pedro as a starting player in Flamengo. When but and Palmeiras has a more cohesive team. They're playing well together in the last 3 seasons under Abel Ferreira. And the thing is, last night, they had a player in getting a red card in the 30th minute, but they didn't got panic. They didn't freak out. They kept playing the same way they play. If they need to play more defense, they know how to do it. If they need to play more offense, they know how to do it. It's a team that can adapt in any situation that they face, in any adversity. That's the thing. And the motto for Abel Ferreira, that's the best motto. Cold mind, heated heart. Like, you play with toughness and passion, but you kept your mind on the game cold. I think there'll be but I still think Flamengo is going to win because I think they're going to have more talent this time. But I don't know. Flamengo and Palmeiras are going to make the Libertadores final. I think, and as a Corinthians fan, that makes me sad because I wish Corinthians would advance to, because it was such a historical run after all the injuries. But it's just Palmeiras and Flamengo are the better teams in South America right now.
Yeah, it sounds like whoever Flamingo or Palmeiras is going to play here. You said they're going to go to penalty kicks here. Sounds like they're pushing each other to the edge. The question is, how much are they going to have left for that semifinal? How much is left in the tank? And especially for a team like Palmeiras, which is just winning everything, that's a very hard challenge. And then on the other side, Flamengo versus Phillips Sarsfield. The Brazilian teams they've been the class of the field in South America. So I expect Flamengo, as long as you'll have any BS refereeing in that match, I respect them to be able to pull that one out pretty easily.
Yeah, that's what I hope for. I really hope no BS refereeing. I mean, VAR should have took that away, but from what I see in the Brazilian league, that keeps questioning again because they see things that nobody see, or they don't see things that everybody see. But I think if there's no BS referee and they play the same way they've been playing, Palmeiras and Flamengo should make into the Libertadores final. And my final topic is the Brazilian league. They're going to week 22. Big matchup for Palmeiras versus Corinthians, first place versus second place. And if so Corinthians now is a must-win game because now Corinthians is out of one competition, Libertadores. If they lose this game at home versus their main rival, their difference is going to be 9 points to first place. And then Palmeiras might ended up finishing this week with 7 points ahead. So now Palmeiras can increase their lead into the Brazilian league. They're in the semifinals of Libertadores. Who can stop them? That's I saw like the funniest memes. It's like one meme was like, "Oh, if I won the lottery, if anybody else won the lottery, buy big cars and fancy houses." And then the meme was like, "If I win the lottery, I would give all the money to Abel Ferreira to go somewhere else and leave Palmeiras because all the other fans, especially Corinthians and Sao Paulo and Santos, can't take him anymore. He's too good of a coach."
Oh, for sure, for sure. And um, when it rains, it pours, and it seems like with Brazilian soccer, it seems like for what it always, at least from the outside, it seems like it's always raining for one team. It seems like it's always just coming. If you're winning one thing, you're winning everything.
Yeah, and when you got the right, it's like in college football. When you get the right coach, you can turn things around. Like before Abel Ferreira got into Palmeiras, there was a lot of expensive players, but they never could get it done. They always get, especially Libertadores, they couldn't get it done. They won two Brazilian leagues before Abel Ferreira got in like between 2015 and 2019. But when Bel Ferreira got, he understood the importance of Libertadores, the importance of this competition, especially for the fans. And it took winning back to back was unthinkable for Palmeiras fans 10 years ago. If anybody got it like to Palmeiras fans, like Palmeiras gonna win back to back Libertadores, they're like, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? If you got one, that's good enough. But now, and yesterday's game, it was one of the games like in college football, like it's like the number one versus the number two team in the nation, and you're losing by a field goal with 1 second left, and you somehow find a way to score a touchdown. Like that's the kind of emotion win. Like you're down one player with in the first 30 minutes, and then you got a second player expelled in the end of the game. So and you survive all of that, so it makes you stronger. That's what Palmeiras I think also is a favorite to make to the finals because the strength of this game I think is going to create more momentum for the tournament, and even maybe in the Brazilian league, maybe you will carry them to win Corinthians and increase the lead from 6 points to 8 points.
Yeah, maybe it'll carry them to next year's Club World Cup as well.
Yeah, that's what the Palmeiras fan really wants to win because they can take the memes anymore. That's their. I mean, winning Libertadores, it's great and all, but all Palmeiras fans want is finally to win that World FIFA Club World Cup, and then all the jokes are gonna disappear. All the memes are gonna disappear. I mean, I know it's hard because of all the discrepancy and all the big difference between Brazilian soccer and European soccer, but I mean, to try to win a tournament, you at least gotta be there.
Oh, absolutely. So if they don't want them to win the Club World Cup, then you just stop them from getting there.
Yeah, and oh my God, Atletico Paranaense scored in the 96th minute with
Wow.
more hockey at the end of the game. Phillips, he is the best in playoffs. He always finds ways. I bet I don't seen the goal, but I bet it was like somehow like a set piece and they got a header or something. Phillips is just a magician. He always finds ways to win games in the playoffs when it matter.
So that means 3 out of the 4 semifinalists are going to be Brazilian.
3 out of the 4 semifinalists in Libertadores looks like are going to be Brazilians. So now it's a 75% chance of all Brazilian final in Libertadores for the third straight season. The Comebol, management, especially the Argentinians, are crying right now.
Yeah. Not a great time to be in Buenos Aires, I feel like.
Oh no, no. And just to finalize the Brazilian side with my hot take, Abel Ferreira is by far the best soccer coach, not only South America but in all America. He should have a chance to coach the Brazil national team. I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, but a Brazil in the Brazil national team should be a Brazilian head coach." But why? Abel Ferreira he was the best, the more successful coach in Brazil in the last 3 seasons. He knows the country, he knows the players. I think he got a grip on how to handle the Brazilian media. He deserves a chance. And I think it wouldn't be a shame. Oh my God, you'll be devaluing the Brazilian head coaches. No, it's just rewarding the best coach here in our country that has been more successful than the others.
Oh, for sure. Um, the value of a great head coach cannot be understated, especially in a continent of so many competitive teams like South America. So, um, it's great to have them in Brazil versus Argentina or anywhere else.
Oh yeah. So that's my hot take. So you go ahead, Nick.
All right, so my hot take, I kind of just teased this earlier when we're talking about college football, but the some of this preseason hype for the Vols is making me a little bit uncomfortable. And let me explain why. So, I remember once upon a time, the year was 2016. The Vols were coming off their best season in 8 years. They had Josh Dobbs coming back. They had Alvin Kamara and Josh Hurd in the backfield. And things were on the up and up for the Volunteers. They were preseason number 9. And at high school, me picked the Vols to go undefeated, and I thought we were winning the national championship. And things didn't exactly work out like that. That team underachieved. They went 8-4, and I told myself I am never picking the Vols to go undefeated again ever, and I'm not picking them to win big. But 2022 now has come around, and I feel and the hype is as big as I've seen it since 2016 with Hendon Hooker, with the offense that we had last year. I'm seeing Fox say that we're going to have the second best offense in the entire country. I see Greg Elroy picking us to win the SEC East. I see multiple people running around saying the Vols are going to be a top 10 team. We need to pump the brakes because we don't know how good the defense is going to be, how much improved are they going to be, what the depth situation is going to look like, what our opponents are even going to look like. We don't know what an LSU is going to do. Of course, Florida, they're a big question mark, and historically we can't seem to beat Florida. Let me qualify this. I'm extremely excited for this season. I'm the most excited I've been for a season since 2016. But because we gotta remember, 18 months ago, this program was a dumpster fire. We were on the verge of falling apart. And Josh Hubble's come in and he's righted the ship very, very quickly. But we're still a long way away, truly, I think, for being championship contenders. We still got to get more depth. We still got to be more proven on the defense side of the ball. And honestly, we got to remember the last time we saw this team on a football field was the Music City Bowl, where they let Purdue score 51 points. Defense didn't play very well that day at all. They didn't. In fact, they played terrible. Third down defense was horrible in that game. It was horrible all season. We gave up 45% of all of our third downs last year. And, the offense can score all they want, but the defense will have to be exponentially better for the Vols to truly be a championship contender. So I think the Vols can still win 9 games this year, but I'm not going to go beyond that because, I just don't know if the defense is going to improve enough to the point where we need them to be. And also, there's certain in-game stuff that, I love Josh Heupel, don't get me wrong. But, I was going back and watched the end of the Purdue game, watch some of the other moments throughout the season. There's times where the up-tempo-ness, while it helps us most of the time, there's times where it comes back to bite us. And, will it come back to bite us again? And can we find a second gear, essentially a mid-tier tempo to help us out? Can we, be more flexible? Can, there are some of the play calls, especially at the end of the Purdue game, for example, like we were on the verge of field goal range, and I think if we had more dinked and dunked, we could have gotten a much easier field goal there at the end, but instead we took some shots down the field that in retrospect I think were a giant mistake from a play calling standpoint. So there's a lot of little things that I need to see before I start calling for any sort of championship for the Vols. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm still excited for the fact that in 3 weeks from tonight, I will be watching the Vols play football. But pump the brakes, because until I see definitive proof that we're getting closer to Georgia, closer to Alabama, pump the brakes on calling the Vols title contenders.
I think this season reminds me more of 2015 than 2016, because 2015 was kind of like the year they established themselves. They got really good wins. I remember that one win over Georgia in Neyland Stadium. They really came close to beating Alabama on the road.
Right.
So I think this reminds me more of the 2015 season.
Yeah. And in some ways, I hope it's repeated that, but in some ways I don't, because 2015's team was better than 2016's. And that was kind of the issue. 2016 regrets, especially on defense. 2015, remember, they lost by a few points to Oklahoma. They lost by a few points to Alabama. They inexplicably let Arkansas come back from a 17-point deficit and let them come back and win. Who else? Florida. They let up a 4th and 14 in the swamp when they had a 13-point lead. That team should have gone at least 11-1, maybe 12-0. That was truly the best Tennessee team that honestly I've seen, because I've been a fan since 2006, and that team honestly had playoff potential. If they could have just finished games, they had a really, really good defense that year. They had a solid offense, but they just couldn't finish games. Then the next year they had a much better offense, but the defense just fell apart. And it's kind of, the kind of, I think the failure of that team, especially losing to Carolina Vanderbilt, is what kind of sent us into a 5-year slide, because Butch Jones fell off in 2017, and we had the Pruitt debacle that we're now just getting out of. So I think, we have to remember we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. It's a process. We're still pushing the boulder over that hill. We're like Kate Bush, we're running up that hill. And hopefully we'll be making that deal with God eventually. Kind of like, Max running out of the Upside Down while listening to that song. But anyway, that's a Stranger Things reference for anyone in the audience. But
and just to finish this show, Atlético Paranaense is in the semifinals. The game just ended 1-0 on the road in Argentina, with a head across in the area, and Vitor Roque scored. There was a VAR check, but there was clear no offside. Historical. I'm really happy. Felipao, he looked like his career was ended, especially after he couldn't save Grêmio from relegation. But now he's in the semifinals of Libertadores, facing his dear Palmeiras. So what a game there's going to be, Palmeiras and Atlético Paranaense.
Pretty awesome. So quick score updates from here. Ravens are going to win 23-10. Preseason game doesn't really matter. Ravens have won on like 25 preseason straight games in a row. Like, John Harbaugh takes it super, super serious. John Harbaugh takes it super seriously for whatever reason. Congratulations on your meaningless winning streak. And going into the bottom of the knife, Cubs lead 4-2. We'll see if we're going to have another walk-off like we did last year, but the Cincinnati Reds aren't exactly the Chicago White Sox, so we'll see. But that concludes episode 37 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. For Gustavo Tomazeli of Americana Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nicholas Hill of Shenandoah, United States. Wishing you all a good evening. Tighten up, or go whatever teams that you root for. So have a good one.
Like lava, heated like a star.